NBC10 at Issue starts now.
I'm Lauren Mayk. Welcome to NBC10 at Issue. We're in the final push before Election Day, and there are important races on both sides of the Delaware River. One of the biggest races in our area is the contest for New Jersey governor. Political observers across the country will be watching to see who wins and what the outcome says about the mood of voters as we come to the end of the first year of President Trump's second term. Congresswoman Mayk is trying to keep the governor's office in Democratic hands. Her opponent, Jack Ciattarelli, hopes to flip it to the Republican Party. A trio of new polls out shows a range of outcomes in the governor's race and shows us why it's so difficult to know where this race will land. A new Quinnipiac poll showing Democrat Mayk lead widening to 8 points. Suffolk University has her up 4 points. Emerson College releasing a poll showing her up in a 1-point race. Those results from Suffolk and Emerson within the poll's margins of error. Early in-person voting has been underway in New Jersey since last weekend. It ends today. Your last chance to vote early in person in the Garden State is tonight. It ends at 6 p.m. In Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court retention election has seen record spending on ads. 3 justices who were elected as Democrats are up for retention. It's a yes or no vote on whether they should get another 10-year term. Joining us now to discuss the big races in our area is a panel of political insiders and experts. Kellen White is a Democratic political strategist. Stephen Danley is the director of the Center for Urban Research and Education at Rutgers University Camden. And Guy Shiraki is a columnist for Broad and Liberty and a former Republican candidate for Congress. Welcome to all of you. Glad to have you here. So we're going to talk about Pennsylvania and New Jersey. I'm going to start in Pennsylvania, mostly with the two of you talking about that. Let's talk about the judges that are on people's ballots. This is a tough one for voters because you don't have candidates running against each other. It's a retention race. Should they keep these Supreme Court justices on the ballot? Kellen, given that and the fact that, it's really tough for voters to get their arms around, what do you think this comes down to? What do you think this race comes down to?
It comes down to information. This race is, as you said, considered a nonpartisan race. The judges do not have the parties next to them. So you have to rely.
But they ran as Democrats.
Yes, they ran as Democrats
when they initially were elected.
For the first term running 10 years ago. But what we do know is the PA Bar Association, which is a nonpartisan organization, recommends retain them because they're fair, because they're independent. And they have a record of cases where they rule based on the law, not based off of corporate interests or based off of millionaires' whims. So I think that they've done what they need to deserve to be retained, and that I hope and really do believe that Pennsylvanians across the Commonwealth are going to vote to retain them.
Guy, what do you think this ultimately comes down to when voters go to the polls?
I was almost persuaded. So, look, I'd say the exact opposite. And I would say this is someone who has voted yes to retain most judges over the years, regardless of party. I think these 3 have distinguished themselves. They have not been fair. They have not been impartial. And they haven't followed the rule of law. They've thrown out bipartisan passed laws on everything from health care to redistricting. They allowed Governor Wolf to rule Pennsylvania essentially as a king. We're parading a lot these days against kings. Tom Wolf was essentially king of Pennsylvania for a year and a half during COVID. These judges allowed him to do it. They've gotten themselves in the game. They have not been fair or impartial. So for what may be the first time in my life, I'm going to vote no for judges, and I think we should, because in a state our size, we can find 3 lawyers or 3 judges who will be fair and impartial and won't get involved and play partisan politics. They have on everything from health care to redistricting to COVID. They've been not only on the wrong side, they haven't been fair and impartial.
You said you could find 3 judges, but if these are voted down, there wouldn't be another election until 2027. In the interim, the governor could appoint someone, but it would have to be approved by the Senate. What do you think the chances are that the Republican-controlled state Senate would approve a justice that is nominated by Governor Shapiro?
So history tells us that it would work just fine. We've had in the last decade a number of statewide judges of both parties who've either aged out or taken on another job, and we've had governors approve, and we've had Democratic governors nominate with the Republican legislature. The reality is you need 2/3, so it's not the Republicans say alone, it's the Republicans and Democrats. I am very confident that if the governor and the Senate sat in a room, they could find people. There are enough retired judges, legal scholars that you can come up with a list of people who would pledge to serve with honor and impartiality until we have an election. And the fact that we couldn't speaks more to the political system. I'm confident we could. Why? Because it's happened in the past. And that shouldn't be the reason that we let 3 people get 10 more years. I mean, that's what's at stake here. Have these 3 done their job so well? Have they been so fair? Have they been so impartial? They should get 10 more years. They don't merit 10 more years. I have every confidence we can find 3 people who will.
Kellen, do you think that all of these justices succeed or fail together?
I think it's hard for voters to distinguish. I don't think voters are going to go turn their ballot around if it's vote by mail or in, paper ballot or in the voter machine and look at 3 justices with no
break them up
party or county next to the name and break them up. I think it really is a vote yes for all. And I think, Guy has brought up the issue of fairness over and over again. Well, I would submit that they have been fair, right? They were the justices that ruled that corporate polluters should be held accountable for the pollution they do that violates our guaranteed constitutional right in Pennsylvania to clean air and clean water, right? They upheld the fair funding formula for education in this Commonwealth, ensuring that students across the Commonwealth get their fair share of the education funding, right? They also, speaking of gerrymandering, threw out partisan maps that actually diluted voters' votes, and in doing so protected the votes of both Democrats, Republicans, and independents, and made sure that in 2020 and in 2024 that people's mail-in votes weren't thrown out because of technical errors, ensuring that their votes were counted, which is what our entire country is based off of, democracy.
All right, you both have had your say on that. I want to hop across over to New Jersey and talk about the New Jersey governor's race there. And Stephen, I want to start with you on this. I traveled around New Jersey, talked to a lot of voters about what's important to them. Over and over again, I heard them talking about cost, in particular, property taxes and utility rates. And some voters said that was important to them. They don't even believe that the candidates were actually going to be able to do anything about it, though. What policy-wise are the chances? Both candidates are saying they're going to do something. What are the chances that they actually can accomplish something?
Well, I think there's 2 different places they can address policy. In the long term, it's about supply. And there's 2 different visions for what it looks like to increase the supply of energy, whether it's through green energy, whether it's through traditional kind of fossil fuel energy, these kind of different visions. And in the short term, it's what do you do in a crisis? And I think both of them have kind of sat down and said, we need something to staunch the bleeding so people can afford to pay their bill next month. And we need something so we don't have this problem in 5 or 10 years.
We have seen, in addition to the candidates, there are other people who have come up in this race, President Trump being one of them. Guy, are you surprised that we haven't seen President Trump in New Jersey for a rally?
No, and I think it's because Jack Ciattarelli's a known quantity. He ran 4 years ago, surprised a lot of people in coming within a razor's edge of making it. He's come back. He's been talking about things like groceries, the cost of groceries, utility bills, the silliness, the madness of trying to put wind turbines off the Jersey shore, which almost now everybody recognizes is bad for the environment and bad for energy. I think the fact that he is a New Jerseyan who's been talking about things people talk about at diners and in their living rooms is why this is a race he's going to win, because Mike Sherrill has tried to make this a national race. She's tried to talk about national issues. She's the one who's brought in national politics and has only recently started talking about local things because I think she understood at the end of the day, people sit at their kitchen table and talk about utility bills. They don't talk about who's going to sue Donald Trump. She tried that strategy. It didn't work. The question is, now that she's returning to kitchen table issues, will she be able to catch up? I don't think so. I think at the end of the day, Jack Ciattarelli wins.
Well, she has pitched her own plan for energy as well with the freeze of utility rates. Kellen, this strategy, though, of talking about President Trump, she has talked about President Trump. Do you think at the end of the day that is effective enough?
Yes, I think what's happening on a national level is affecting people every day. We're in the midst of a government shutdown right now. People who are on SNAP are not going to get their benefits. So this is not times in the past where national government didn't affect your daily life. But also, she is talking about the local issues, right? Polling has shown that voters actually trust her more to lower costs than Jack, right? And that stuff matters. But what also matters is the people they have on the ground. I know that Mayk Sherrill's campaign has one of the largest, if not the largest, volunteer door-knocking operations in the history of New Jersey, which means that her campaign is going and talking to voters every single day. That's what's going to really matter at the end of the day, is who has communicated the most with the voters that they need to win. And I think Mayk Shero's campaign has done that.
Stephen, when you look at this moment that New Jersey is in right now, we can kind of look back and see what New Jersey has done in the past. New Jersey's often watched because it's in these off-year elections after a presidential race. You've sort of dug into that. How do you look at this moment in terms of whether do historical trends continue in terms of, well, you tell me.
Sure. There are these two different trends that are colliding. One is that you haven't seen a governor's party, when the governor's term limited, win a race since 1961. And so this is really in favor of the Cettarelli campaign. And there's this thought that, you know, the Murphy administration as governor is going to have to own the challenges folks feel about affordability. On the other side, you've seen this responsiveness to the national presidential elections. President Obama gets elected, we see Governor Christie. President Trump gets elected the first time, we see Governor Murphy, who was one of the most progressive governors in years in New Jersey. And so we have this reactionary trend. And each campaign's kind of doubled down on that strategy. The Cettarelli campaign has doubled down on trying to make Democrats own the costs in New Jersey. And the Shero campaign has said, look around, it's the big, beautiful bill. It's these national issues. It's tariffs that are hurting affordability. And really, you're seeing both of them double down on the trends, and we'll see which one ends up playing better.
Guy, you're kind of moving around. What do you got to say?
Well, look, I think as somebody who spent most of his life at the Jersey Shore, right, it's with no great satisfaction. Governor Murphy has been a train wreck. And as much as folks want to talk about President Trump, the reality is Governor Murphy, Phil Murphy's been the governor for the last 8 years. Mayk Sherow is not campaigning with him. They are not at rallies together. She's not saying, let me continue on his good work. He essentially has been off limits to her campaign. So the voters are going to ask themselves, who's more likely to take us away from the person who gave us high taxes, high utilities, and the disastrous idea of putting wind turbines off the Jersey Shore? And that's not going to be Sherow. It's going to be Cettarelli. I think it is much more relevant to everyday folks to realize that the governor, who's been governor for 8 years, that he is nowhere to be found in this campaign because he's been a failure. And even the Democratic candidate is trying to get away from him.
You know, Kellen, actually, you're a good person to ask about this because you have been in a situation, you worked for the Harris campaign, sure, where she had to sort of figure out how to balance her work in the Biden administration with also being her own candidate and talking about what her administration would look like. What do you think of how Sherow has done that with the Murphy administration?
Well, Mayk Sherow was not a member of the Murphy administration, so sure, she is not.
It's not exactly the same, but it's
a
challenge for the candidate.
And I think when you hear Mayk Sherow on the campaign trail, she talks about the challenges people in New Jersey are facing, some of which some people will blame on the Murphy administration, but she's not shying away from that, right? At the end of the day, she is standing up for what the people of New Jersey need and want. And I think that's what they're ultimately going to look at. Whereas if you contrast that with Jack, and particularly what President Trump is doing with the tunnel, right? He's shutting down the Gateway Tunnel, shutting down this tunnel project. We haven't seen Jack stand up and say, well, that's wrong. He hasn't pushed back on the president who he claims to talk to multiple times all the time on this, whereas Mayk Sherow
he actually told me that he did talk to the president about the tunnel.
But Mayk Sherow is standing up for New Jersey residents and letting them know that she will be a fighter for them when she's the governor of New Jersey, which I expect she will be after Tuesday.
Numbers game. Ahead, the power of voters who have not chosen a party, but who could choose the next New Jersey governor.
This is NBC10 at Issue.
We're back now on NBC10 at Issue as we continue to count down to Tuesday's election and one of the most watched races in the country, the race for New Jersey governor. What do the candidates need to do in the final days and hours of the race? I spoke with Ashley Koenig from the Eagleton Center for Public Interest Polling at Rutgers University. Independent voters, unaffiliated voters are so important in New Jersey. There are so many of them. They are voting early and turning in mail-in ballots at a much slower pace than Republicans and Democrats. Does that tell you anything in particular, the fact that they aren't getting in there and getting their vote in at quite the pace of the folks who are registered with parties?
I think it's a big question mark with them, whether they're voting early or whether they're voting day of. We don't know who unaffiliateds are necessarily voting for, whether it's early and, of course, on election day. So I think really throughout all of this, it just leaves one huge question mark of who they're going to go for. Now, their lack of numbers in early voting either points to maybe they're still making up their minds and saving it for election day, or maybe they're simply just not turning out. And for Chitterelli, he especially needs those independents to cross the finish line, and he needs to persuade them and get them to vote. For Cheryl, she also needs those unaffiliateds in order to make sure that she pads any kind of victory with her party base in case her party base doesn't show up.
We have a complete voter guide to help you before Election Day. Go to NBC10.com and the NBC10 app. Storm devastation. Hurricane Melissa was the most powerful storm ever recorded to strike the island of Jamaica. Ahead, the recovery effort that is underway and how you can help.
This is NBC 10 at Issue.
This past week, Hurricane Melissa slammed into the island of Jamaica. Drone footage shows us just some of the damage the Category 5 storm left behind. You can see damaged buildings, roofs torn off, trees uprooted, and debris littering the streets. At the time we're recording this, we know at least 4 people have died, according to Jamaican officials. Melissa was the strongest storm on record to hit the country. And for more now on Jamaica's recovery from the storm and what you can do to help, we're joined by Christopher Chaplin, Jamaica's honorary consul in Philadelphia. Thanks so much for joining us at this time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, even under trying circumstances.
Well, tell us, first of all, what you are hearing from the ground there. I know you've been in touch with people. What are they telling you about the damage that this storm did there?
Sure, and so the storm ended up on the western part of Jamaica on the south coast and made a turn in a northerly direction, and that hit several parishes really hard. St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, town of Black River is devastated. So I've seen drone footage, and our Prime Minister flew over and had a look and landed as well. And we're very concerned, obviously, but there's vast damage in that section of the island. In the rest of the island, there's also damage from flooding, etc., but really it's devastating in St. Elizabeth and Westmoreland.
What do the coming weeks and months and even years look like for Jamaica? What are the next steps?
I would say the coming days are critical because our Office of Disaster Protection, Prevention and Emergency Management is on site and moving in to clear the roads. In the next couple of weeks, I think we're trying to get supplies into these areas that were devastated. Those supplies include tarpaulins, because a lot of the roofs just simply lifted, generators and other kind of supplies to restore electricity and communication. In the medium term, obviously, there's a question of what do we do in terms of replacing lost shelter. And that's going to be a critical question, replacing and fixing infrastructure, the roads especially. That's going to be a critical question. Sort of in the medium to long term, there's a question of tourism. Tourism is one of the largest foreign exchange earners in our country. And certainly we're going to take a hit in the short term. Having said that, the good thing is that our government has been very financially disciplined over the years. We have good reserves, we have good relationship with international partners, and we also have access to an insurance bond that was created years ago. So make no mistake about it, the next couple of weeks, next couple of months are going to be tough. But I can tell you Jamaica is a resilient country, a resilient people, and we'll be back.
For folks who are watching all of this play out and want to be part of that recovery, want to help, what would you say to them?
Sure. So we have set up, we actually started last Friday going into Saturday, setting up drop-off locations because we kind of understood, we didn't clearly understand the extent of the devastation, but certainly we understood that we're going to be hit. And so we set up drop-off points at several locations. The 2 that were the first set up are one was in West Philadelphia at Besco Shippers, which is 5425 Baltimore Avenue, and they're taking shipments from Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we also set up one in northern Philadelphia at Tree United Church on Sundays from 10 to 3. So we set up those drop-off points. We have added a few more in Norristown and in Delaware. Additionally, we were supplied with a list by our Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, which is the equivalent of FEMA. And that list is very detailed. We've been getting the word out.
Specific things that are needed.
Yes, and quantities.
Are there specific things? What are the specific things? Because a lot of times you need certain things and not others. What is needed more than others?
Excellent point. I remember last year in Hurricane Beryl, people were sending clothes. We don't want to take down clothes. So specific items include, tarpaulins because the roofs would have flown. Generators. A couple actually dropped off a generator yesterday, which was really good. Things like MREs, meal ready to eat, as well as hygiene kits, stuff like that. But it's an extensive list, 4 pages long, and we've been getting that list out to as many people as we can. The government recently set up a portal where donations can be made, supportjamaica.gov.jm. And I'm looking forward to, all the support we can get. And I want to extend a thank you to you and your team for allowing me to come on just to talk a bit. Thank you very much.
Christopher Chaplin, thank you so much for your time and perspective. Well, if you are looking for ways to help those impacted by Hurricane Melissa, just head to NBC10.com. We've compiled a list of charities accepting donations. You can find a link right on our homepage. We'll be right back.
This is NBC10 at Issue.
Before we wrap up this edition of NBC10 at Issue, one more reminder. Tuesday is Election Day. Polling places in New Jersey open at 6 a.m. In Pennsylvania, it's 7 a.m. In both states, polls are open until 8 p.m. Count on NBC10 for complete coverage of the results on air and online on the NBC10 app. That does it for this edition of NBC10 at Issue. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.